I'd settled for the less and the more that Marcus wanted. Jesus, was I turning into Marcus? Would he be buying me shoes soon?
About a Boy continues after the ITV news.
This is my motor movie!
Motorola flip phones. Sponsor ITV movies.
Hello, Moto.
When the mob want you dead,
Dolores Van Cartier, $250,000 dead or alive.
you'd better pray that heaven can help.
We've got to save her. We can't leave it up to the feds.
Whoopi Goldberg,
Look at me. I'm a nun. I'm a penguin.
Sister Act, Friday at 9 on ITV3.
From a woman who can't get it right
I think I may have made a terrible mistake.
to a couple who can't get enough.
What Jordan wants, Jordan gets.
We're as bad as each other.
Love makes people do the strangest things.
Hello, Mark?
He's been a very naughty boy today, and he's gonna pay for it.
We go behind the scenes for a closer look.
And I'm just more up front, you know.
St. Bridget, brand new diary, followed by When Jordan Met Peter, Friday from 10, exclusive to ITV1.
Having one of those days? Relax. You're not the only one.
He's jumping!
Do it!
This is Sergeant Dave Bell. He has a Kahoot loan fixed at just 5.7% APR for the life of the loan.
Happy!
I got it. Fuck!
Unfortunately, Kahoot can only make you good with money.
Give me the... Don't yell at me! Come on! Let's name the species that live in the sea. Come on, sing with me.
Sky.
Just the girls this time.
What do you want to watch?
Seaweed is cool. Seaweed is fun.
Orange don't like to be beaten on tariffs. So if you find a selected standard tariff on the high street that you really like from one of the other major networks, then we'll match it. The Orange Value Promise. That really is another reason to be orange.
At B&Q, we never stop bringing you low prices.
Save £5 on this powered Scorpion handsaw. It's now under £35.
B&Q prices, too low to miss.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby.
Max Factor presents
Thursday afternoon, trying to look like a love goddess. How can anyone resist?
Max Factor's new silk gloss.
The dazzling shine of a lip gloss, the delicious feel of a lip balm. Heaven.
New silk gloss now appearing in Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason. Max Factor, the makeup of makeup artists.
Hello, creepy crawly casting. Oh, hello, Ant. Hello, Deck. What? You want me to appear in a new series of I'm a Celebrity? Who's in it? Yes. Him? Oh, really? Her too? I'd be delighted. And you'd like me to have dinner with them? I'd love to.
Who would you like to see in the new series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here?
What's on the menu?
So we've the final part of our movie premiere, About a Boy, coming up in just half an hour. First on ITV1 with Wednesday's latest news, we join Nicholas Owen.
Street by street, the dramatic battle to take Fallujah. The intense fighting has left the Americans occupying most of the rebel city. British forces have been under fire. We have our eyewitness report of attacks on Camp Dogwood. Also tonight, stub it out, the Scots are told. Will the whole UK get a smoking ban? American interest rates rise. We investigate the consequences for us. And blue moments. Have Chelsea knocked Newcastle out of the Carling Cup?
In the West Country, demand for seatbelts on trains. Father of teenage crash victim says they could have saved her life. Good evening. Most of Fallujah is tonight occupied, though not controlled by American forces. The fight is far from over. They still face pockets of resistance, fierce ones. Today, the Iraqi military said it had found what it called hostage slaughterhouses in the city. One US general said it would take 2 more days to capture Fallujah. Today, American forces closed in from all directions. They claim to have taken 70% of the city, including Highway 10, the main east-to-west route through Fallujah. Paul Davis has today's developments.
We're going in. We're taking the city this time.
We're taking the city. No idle boast, 2/3 of Fallujah is tonight in American hands. But it's been achieved the hard way. Close combat is rarely witnessed in modern-day conflict. These remarkable images, sent back by journalists embedded with the Marines, tell a story just about as far away from the clinical long-range warfare the Americans would prefer to wage as it's possible to be. Here, every house in every street has to be taken, and the Marines come under fire from militants they can't see. When an enemy gun position is spotted in one of the many shell-scarred buildings, tanks are brought up. This firefight in the Jolan district lasted more than 7 hours, but at the end of it another block had been gained.
I want to keep pushing up.
I want to keep pushing up, the officer says, but the swift progress of this operation has been at a cost. Even before today's street battles, 10 American soldiers had been killed, more than 40 Marines and their Iraqi allies injured. The wounded evacuated under fire as the advance continued. There are no accurate figures on the number of militants dead or civilian casualties. Here, a group of people waving white flags and claiming to be civilians walked away from another firefight. The Marines are still meeting fierce resistance from insurgents who appear to be firing from Fallujah's historic mosques.
We're taking fire from the mosque just directly south of us. The ones we can see, yeah? The big one right there.
Iraqi troops who've been fighting alongside the Americans may now be asked to enter the mosques and take on the insurgents. Earlier, they were pictured raising the Iraqi flag over a recaptured police headquarters. Iraqi officials say their soldiers have also taken a building used until recently to hold and slaughter hostages. The hostage takers may be on the run, they are still defiant. Tonight they released this video, said to show 20 Iraqi soldiers they've taken prisoner in Fallujah. The prisoners have their backs to the camera There's no way of knowing if this is a stunt or proof the extremists have just acquired a human shield. Paul Davis, ITV News.
The assault on Fallujah has taken on a very sinister significance for the Iraqi interim Prime Minister Iyad Allawi. 3 members of his family have been kidnapped. The hostage takers say they'll be beheaded unless US forces pull out of Fallujah and rebel prisoners are freed. British troops south of Fallujah came under serious attack again today. An Army Air Corps pilot is fighting for his life. He was hit by insurgent bullets fired at his helicopter during a flight between Camp Dogwood and Baghdad. On the ground, another of the Black Watch was injured by a rocket attack on the camp. Julian Mannion is there tonight.
As the battle for Fallujah goes on, it's been a day of repeated insurgent attacks in and around Camp Dogwood that has left 2 British servicemen injured. A day that has shown that the hidden enemy around this camp is well organised and determined to do the British harm. The rebels' first target was a pair of British helicopters flying from Camp Dogwood back to their base in the south. Insurgent rifle fire hit one of them, seriously injuring the pilot. The co-pilot managed to bring the damaged Lynx helicopter safely back to Dogwood. Soon afterwards, an American medevac chopper touched down in a cloud of red smoke next to the camp clinic. And the pilot, still fighting for his life, was carefully put on board for the flight to Baghdad. But even as the Black Hawk raced away at low level, insurgent gunners had Camp Dogwood in their sights. Out of nowhere, a volley of rockets slammed into the camp and exploded. Troops took cover, but one of the 4 rockets injured a British serviceman. 3 hours later, more rockets whistled in. As a rocket landed outside, we took cover in the derelict building reinforced with sandbags that is home to journalists at Camp Dogwood. The sirens are wailing again as Camp Dogwood comes under rocket fire for the 2nd time today. In the first attack, 1 British serviceman was injured as a rocket ploughed into the helicopter landing pad. At the moment, we don't know what's happened out there. We heard 2 impacts, but there are no reports of casualties or damage. There were no serious injuries in the 2nd attack. Today, the commander of the Black Watch had ordered a drill to test camp security. By the time the day was over, everyone here knew that the threat was real. Julian Mannion, ITV News at Camp Dogwood, Iraq.
The dangers faced by British troops in Iraq was brought home to the Prime Minister today. A wreath of poppies in memory of those soldiers killed there since the start of the war on Saddam Hussein was laid on the steps of number 10 by their families. One father said they'd done it because the blame lies at the doorstep of Downing Street. Well, let's go live to Downing Street now and our senior political correspondent, John Ray. John, how much of a problem do you think it is for Tony Blair, this group?
Well, the laying of that wreath was certainly a powerful symbolic act, Nick. It was also a day here of great emotion and great anger, the parents describing the war variously as immoral, illegal, an act of lunacy. Now, their grief has turned them into the most potent weapons that the anti-war campaigners have got. Against that, Mr. Blair can simply argue that Iraq in the long run will be worth it, and to walk away now as the parents want to withdraw troops would simply be to abandon Iraq to a much worse fate. Now, the polls show that just about most people are with Mr. Blair on that point. So the only thing that really unites all sides this week, Remembrance Week, is the fear of what sacrifices British troops may yet have to make.
And the Prime Minister, he's heading to Washington tomorrow, isn't he, for a meeting with George Bush. What's he hoping to achieve?
Well, Downing Street have been quietly playing up expectations of this meeting. When people talk about payback for Mr. Blair, they talk about the President putting more muscle into the Middle East peace process. A statement of intent is what Number 10 said they were looking for from President Bush. Tonight, Nick, they got that from the President, saying that the end of the Arafat era signalled the beginning of a new era of hope in the Middle East.
There will be an opening for peace when leadership of the Palestinian people steps forward and says, help us build a democratic and free society. And when that happens, and I believe it's going to happen because I believe all people desire to live in freedom, the United States of America will be more than willing to help build the institutions necessary for a free society to emerge so that the Palestinians can have their own state.
You will note there the commitment again to a Palestinian state, but there are many, many, many people, Nick, who'll say, frankly, the Prime Minister will come back with nothing more useful than those kind of sound bites.
John, thank you. Well, as John was mentioning, with Yasser Arafat's life slipping away, it seems the somewhat undignified wrangle over his burial has finally ended. The ground is now being prepared in his West Bank compound in Ramallah. Well, Juliet Bremner is outside his hospital in Paris now. Juliet, what's the latest on Yasser Arafat?
Well, there is now a sense that we're waiting for the inevitable, Nick. Everyone here knows that Yasser Arafat is dying. It's a question of when confirmation of that will come. His dire predicament was underlined today by his close friend and senior Muslim cleric, Tazeen al-Tamimi, who spent most of the day at his bedside reciting verses of the Quran. He just came out tonight from the hospital and he said to us that Mr. Arafat's breathing is still normal and he saw his shoulder move 3 times. He said under such circumstances they couldn't contemplate removing life support. However, Mr. Arafat's life is naturally slipping away. The Palestinian foreign minister said today that both his liver and kidneys had failed, which means that only his heart and lungs are still functioning, and those with the help of a machine.
And when he does die, what happens then?
Well, we do know that funeral preparations are now well underway. Egypt said today that his funeral will be held in Cairo. And there are signs outside his shattered headquarters in Ramallah today that they're preparing for a burial place. The Israelis have agreed it wouldn't have been the first choice of the Palestinians. However, it is the place he was held as a virtual prisoner for the last 3.5 years, so perhaps it'll be a fitting memorial.
Juliet in Paris, thank you. Pubs and restaurants in Scotland should become smoke-free zones in 18 months' time. Today, the Scottish Cabinet, in its most significant decision so far, voted for a ban on smoking in enclosed public places. There isn't one anywhere else in the UK yet. The idea is to cut smoking-related disease and improve the health of the nation. Well, Martin Geisler is in a smoke-filled pub in Glasgow tonight.
This is a no-compromise ban. In 18 months' time, it'll be a crime to light up in any pub, club or restaurant anywhere in Scotland. A big deal and a big day for devolution. After all the criticism, Scotland's politicians have shown they are prepared to make controversial decisions out of step with Westminster. Even some smokers here will raise a glass to that. A good night out in a Scottish pub. Smokers here are in the minority, but it's getting up everyone's nose. The warnings on passive smoking are clear. Today, Scotland's politicians called time.
It will be a comprehensive ban, and a comprehensive ban will be a clear signal that Scotland has changed. It will reduce smoking, it will save lives, and it will help transform our national health.
Health experts say it's a massive breakthrough in the fight to rid Scotland of its reputation as the sick man of Europe.
I've been practicing medicine in the National Health Service now for 25 years, and I can honestly say I think this is the most important public health step forward in my career.
There will be a political backlash. Publicans have promised that, warning the new law will kill business.
At least 30% of your customers who come into the pub actually smoke. And if those 30% choose not to come in because there's a smoking ban, it means paying people off. It means that your business is devastated.
But should licensees in England and Wales share those fears? John Reid, the Health Secretary, is due to publish a long-awaited white paper on the subject next week. It will include restrictions on smoking in public places, but may fall short of a full ban. Government thinking is that driving smokers out of pubs and into their homes may not be a good idea. This advert reminds us of the dangers of passive smoking among children. What's more, Dr. Reid doesn't want to alienate traditional Labour voters.
Sometimes, as my mother would put it, people from those lower socio-economic categories have very few pleasures in life, and one of them they regard as smoking.
In Scotland, the decision is made, but the debate continues.
If people want to smoke, then they can, but I don't want to inhale their passive smoke, you know, so.
Pubs, drink and fags go together.
But not for much longer. Come spring 2006, doing this in Scotland will be a criminal offence. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Glasgow.
It's been day 2 of the New Year shooting murder trial, and the prosecution lawyer outlined the possible motives for the killing of Charlene Ellis and Letitia Shakespeare. He said they were innocently caught up in a feud based on revenge, reprisal and rivalry. 5 men are on trial for their murder. Geraint Vincent was in court.
Shot dead while standing in an alleyway outside a New Year's party, it is the prosecution's case that Charlene Ellis and Letitia Shakespeare were the victims of a drive-by shooting, which was well planned but botched. Timothy Raggett QC told Leicester Crown Court this morning that this was an operation intended to kill, and that was its plain intention. It may not have been the desired consequence that Letitia and Charlene died, but the fact that the defendants clearly desired to kill someone is almost beyond question. The someone, or some people concerned, we suggest, are likely to have been their rivals. In the Aston area of Birmingham, says the prosecution, there has been a culture of street gangs, one called the Burger Bar and one called the Johnson Crew. The men charged with the girl's murder were members of the Burger Bar, and when they fired the shots into the group of people, which included Charlene and Letitia, their actual targets were members of the Johnson Crew. This trial has heard that the motive for the attack could have been revenge for the murder 4 weeks earlier of this man, Johann Martin. He was the brother of one of the defendants in this case, Nathan Martin. Charlene and Letitia were described in court today as close friends who went out together all the time. They were in no sense, said the prosecution, a part of Birmingham's gang culture, but in every sense, the victims of it. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Leicester.
Around 100 British troops are on standby to go to the Ivory Coast to help rescue British nationals. Mobs there have been targeting foreign citizens after violence erupted between French peacekeepers and local forces. American interest rates were nudged up again this evening by another 1/4 percentage point. The Federal Reserve Bank agrees the economy is looking healthier, especially in terms of jobs. The real worry, economists say, is America's huge and growing budget deficit. Robert Moore in the United States has more details.
The nation's central bank just voted to raise interest rates 1/4 point, and
this is the 4th interest rate rise this year. It's not a surprise, but it brings into focus the state of the US economy just as the president ponders his second term.
We still got work to do.
Mr. Bush's in-tray is filling up with memos about how to accelerate America's economic growth and how to tackle the huge budget and trade deficits. Some economists are already warning of a major challenge ahead.
We're steering towards a cliff of a real financial crisis due to the combination of large household debt, large budget deficits, and large trade deficits, and that will unravel at some point, either through a real financial crisis or through prolonged slow growth for the future.
America has by far the largest economy in the world. It's the engine for global growth, and that's one reason why the trade deficit matters so much. And just look at the figures. When George Bush came to power 4 years ago, he inherited a massive trade surplus of $236 billion. But by 2002, the US was importing more than it exported, and today the country's trade deficit is a record $422 billion. But amid that serious problem of growing deficits, the Bush administration is pointing to improving employment and export figures, suggesting, they say, the American economy is rapidly gaining strength. But what impact is that having on the British economy and on world growth? Well, we asked one British economist.
The US economy is still likely to grow at a good 3–3.5% over the course of the next year or so, and that provides a good solid base for world growth in general.
But European exporters, including those well-known British brands, are struggling in America for another reason: the exchange rate.
We export some 15% of our total exports to the United States. The dollar has been weakening for some time now, and consequently that makes our exports slightly more expensive, and therefore we can tend to lose market share if we're not careful.
The dollar's problems stem from that huge trade gap and budget deficit. And another stress on this energy-hungry economy is the fact that oil prices remain so high. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
That interest rate decision didn't trouble US financial markets. They're expecting another in December. The Dow closed down less than a point at 10,385. Here, the FTSE, the main measure of shares in London, closed up 16.8 points at 4,734, despite a fall in shares in Vodafone, who today launched their third-generation mobile phone services. Their price closed down 2 pence to 137.75 pence. Now with tonight's main sports news, here's Felicity.
Thank you, Nick. Jose Mourinho's Chelsea are through to the quarter-finals of the Carling Cup. They beat Newcastle at St James's Park, but it took 2 goals in extra time to seal the victory. Alex Thomas reports.
Alan Shearer and John Terry leading out Newcastle and Chelsea, England internationals past and present. Clearly these two clubs couldn't afford to copy Arsenal and Manchester United by fielding weakened teams. But despite the first choice players on show, much of the early action was second-rate. Scoring chances were rare, although Chelsea's goalkeeper Carlo Cudicini was the busiest. But if Newcastle threatened more in the first half, they were forced back after the break.
Oh, he's missed a great chance for Chelsea.
Thiago should have put Chelsea ahead. His manager couldn't believe it. So no goals after 90 minutes, but Jose Mourinho's mood was lifted in extra time. First Ida Gudjonsson broke the deadlock. And then Dutch winger Ian Robben clinched a 2-0 victory for Chelsea with this brilliant solo goal.
Can he go all the way through? You bet he can!
Alex Thomas, ITV News.
Elsewhere, Liverpool players and fans paid their respects to Emlyn Hughes ahead of tonight's game against Middlesbrough. Hughes, who died yesterday aged 57, played more than 650 matches for Liverpool and won almost every honour in the game. He was affectionately known as Crazy Horse by the Liverpool fans. And these are the results of all of tonight's Carling Cup games. Liverpool beat holders Middlesbrough, Neil Mellor scoring both goals. Manchester United were 2-0 winners over Crystal Palace, and Fulham recovered from a goal down to triumph 4-2 after extra time at the City Ground. And you can see all those goals on ITV1 at 11:35 tonight. It was also League Cup night in Scotland, where Rangers met Celtic in an extraordinary game. John Hartson putting Celtic ahead, but with just 5 minutes remaining, Rangers came back. Dado Perso, the scorer. And then in extra time, Shoto Avaladze scored the winner to send Rangers through to the semi-finals. And in the night's other Scottish League Cup quarter-final, Hearts beat Dunfermline 3-1. Jason Robinson has described being awarded the England captaincy as one of the biggest moments of his life. The former rugby league star is stand-in for Johnny Wilkinson for all 3 autumn tests, and his first job is to stop England's recent run of 5 defeats in 6 matches.
No, as I say, I'm excited. You know, I have an opportunity that I never dreamed of before, and I'm hoping to, you know, to do well in that role. As I say, we've got some great players around us, some players that are on very good form. So I'm just looking forward to Saturday and leading the team out to hopefully what will be, you know, a good game for us.
And that is tonight's sport. Nick.
Thank you, Felicity. Join me again in a few minutes when I'll have a reminder of our headlines and a preview of some of tomorrow's newspapers. Now it's time to link up again with ITV newsrooms around the country for what's been going on where you are.
Good evening. On West Country News tonight, seatbelt call. Devon father claims fitting them on trains could have saved his daughter's life. And the post office protest that brought a Devon town to a standstill. The father of the Devon teenager killed in last weekend's rail crash has tonight called for all high-speed trains to be fitted with seatbelts. Peter Webster believes the simple safety device could have saved Emily's life. Sharon Goebel reports.
Emily's father only agreed to be interviewed at the family home here in Dockham today because he wants something positive to come out of Emily's death and to prevent other families going through what his family's going through. He describes Emily as a shining flame whose light has been turned out forever, a teenager who had everything to live for. And he believes a relatively cheap safety measure could have saved her life and those of others on the train.
There is absolutely no doubt that a lap belt would both have saved Emily from being thrown from the seat and a friend from being thrown from the seat, and I'm sure many others. I mean, I know there were at least 2 other people killed that were thrown out of the windows. So there is no doubt Emily would still be here if she would have been wearing a belt.
An inquest into Emily's death and the 6 others killed in the weekend crash was opened and adjourned in Berkshire today. Peter Webster says this is just the start of his campaign to get rail companies to install seatbelts, and he won't take no for an answer. Sharon Goebel at Dockham for West Country News.
Traffic was halted in Newton Abbot today as around 200 campaigners took to the streets in protest over plans to move their post office. It's part of a nationwide campaign to make high street branches more profitable by getting local business people to take over the offices.
A solemn march, the walk to where the post office is likely to be moved, a convenience store, 500 begrudged yards from the bus stop. Not so convenient for pensioners.
It'll affect everybody badly, I think, you know. I think it's a stupid thing to do.
And I feel it's the hub. You know, people come off the bus into the town, they sit there, and it brings trade into the town for the market stalls and everywhere.
Terrible. But if the post office is integral to town life, then it's likely to grind to a halt. Electronic banking means fewer post office customers. There's already been a decline in rural and urban services, and now there's to be a change in the running of high street branches.
The cost cutter store will have more counter positions than the current Crown Office has. It will have longer opening hours. It will be a much better proposition for our customers. So it won't be stuck at the back of a convenience store. It'll be in a bright, well-maintained, well-lit and an attractive commercial proposition.
The post office says it will not compromise customers' services or access to its services in the process of change. But these campaigners believe the new management plans are already one step too far. Gemma Woodman for West Country News.
The father of the South Devon backpacker murdered with her boyfriend in Thailand is seeking a meeting with the Home Secretary after learning the murder suspect has been released on bail. The families of Vanessa Ascott from Ashburton and Andrew Lloyd from Torquay found out yesterday that Police Sergeant Somjai Fisasinghe was now on bail. Mr Ascott has many concerns about his release and wants to raise them with Jack Straw. There was standing room only at a public meeting tonight to discuss controversial plans to create a no-take zone for fishermen in Cornwall. Conservationists want to shut off the area surrounding Scylla, the artificial reef in Whitsand Bay, to protect marine life. But fishermen aren't happy about the ban and turned out in force this evening. The consultation in Corsand was so packed some people couldn't even get in. People have until the end of the month to have their say. And now for more news where you are.
Good evening. Plymouth Police have been given powers to break up groups of people causing trouble on the streets during the festive season. Dispersal powers were first used on Union Street during the summer as part of a campaign to tackle binge drinking. The result was a 50% reduction in serious assaults. The new dispersal zone includes the city centre and the Barbican. It'll be in force until after the new year. School children from across Devon have been finding out whether they're cut out for a career in childcare. 600 pupils have been getting hands-on experience at a recruitment fair today. They were given a taste of what working in a playgroup or nursery is like to try to encourage both boys and girls to consider it as a job. Top Plymouth skipper Conrad Humphreys is gaining on the leader in the round-the-world yacht race, the Vendée Globe. Conrad is now lying 8th in the field of 20 yachtsmen and women after the third full day at sea. It's a gruelling solo race, 24,000 miles, but Conrad has told his shore crew he's now getting into his stride, surfing along huge steep waves as they sail past the west coast of Africa. Derriford Hospital is offering visitors a glimpse behind the scenes of a modern-day operating theatre. Derriford has 29 theatres and is one of the best centres for heart surgery in the whole country. Staff hope the open day will give people a chance to see how the teams work and also allay people's fears of operating theatres. Well, that's the news from the south for this evening. Now let's check out what the weather has in store for us tomorrow as we join Kate Reeves for a full forecast.
Good evening. Dry and clear out there tonight, and this will allow the temperature to drop to around 3 Celsius, giving a ground frost, especially in the east, but keeping slightly milder elsewhere. So a cold and frosty start to the day tomorrow, but quite sunny too. This will quickly fade though as cloud increases from the north and turning rather misty and drizzly too, especially over higher ground. Feeling rather chilly, highs struggling to reach 10 Celsius, and that's 50 Fahrenheit. Well, after that, Friday looks rather dull, with maybe some rain developing later on. By the time we reach Saturday, though, everywhere should be dry and sunny, and the same goes for most of Sunday, although it will turn rather overcast and wet by the end of the day. And this will then give a rather dull start to next week. That's all from me. Good night.
Well, that's it from us for now. We'll have more news in GMTV in the morning. For now, though, I'll hand you back to the ITV News studio and Nicholas Owen for a summary of the national and world news. From the team in Plymouth, good night.
Hello again. A reminder of tonight's top stories. American troops have fought their way into the centre of Fallujah. US generals say they now hold 70% of the city. Smoking in Scottish pubs and restaurants is to be banned in 18 months' time. The Scottish Cabinet voted for that today. And President Bush has said the now imminent death of Yasser Arafat may provide a fresh opportunity for peace in the Middle East. Let's look now at the front pages of some of tomorrow's newspapers. The Guardian's main story is about Conservative Party plans to allow fathers more paternity leave. It has a picture of one of the soldiers killed in Iraq shown at the demonstration of family and friends in Downing Street. Lest we forget is the Daily Mail's headline. It shows a wreath placed on the doorstep of 10 Downing Street by the families of those soldiers killed in Iraq. On Remembrance Day, The Independent pictures soldiers killed in Iraq over the last year who add to the toll of British troops killed in conflicts. And The Scotsman has that story about the historic smoking ban in Scotland. It reports that smokers will be fined £100 if they light up in public places. That's it tonight. Next on the ITV News channel.
That is completely wrong, and I think it's just another example of his shabby opportunism.
Prime Minister's questions from earlier today. I'll be back with tomorrow's lunchtime news. If you can, do join me at 12:30. From the team here, good night.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by Powergen.